in full, yeah. And our road is called Orchard Way. I don't know.
Yes, far entire.
Yeah, our new road.
Yeah. There's no question when I saw that, like, I think this is the most perfect name for this.
It's
road.
bringing, it's probably.
Kind of just out of curiosity, does this transcribe the recording at the end? You want to try that?
Do you want to sit here or on this side or on this side?
Is that a setting I internally?
I don't think so.
Recording in progress.
I think it doesn't do.
I asked you at the end.
Fine to me. Yeah.
All right. I think it's a little after 5, so do you guys want to get started?
Yeah.
No, Heather? So a couple of things just before we get started. Have a few logistical challenges this evening at the town office. The Board of Selectmen have a 6 o'clock meeting to go for the audit, which is a very critical part of the town meeting process. So that's something that has to happen. That is a public meeting, which means that we have to log on the Zoom in our meeting at 6 o'clock. A little before 6, actually, so they can get set up at 6. So I think depending on whether or not anybody's on this Zoom, we can after that either end the meeting if we have a big, large audience online, or and then we can close the Zoom meeting and we'll continue our discussion for a little bit longer, but we'll probably end a little before we had originally thought that we were going to end tonight. If that works for everybody. Just to be kind of collaborative, and there may also be select board members and members of the public involved. Just who's fired up to who's fired up to go hear about the audit, but there's a public meeting that's happening. So what we're gonna do tonight, basically, I'll just review the agenda, then talk about some edits, but we have some time as always to approve the minutes from the last meeting. We have some time for public comment if there is any. There's some committee updates related to the survey and some additional committee members' discussions. We're starting to plan for activities over the summer that we'd like to talk about and prep a little bit for town meeting, which is next week. And then next on our agenda would be, I think everybody should have gotten a copy of the housing section, the natural resources section, marine resources section. So our original intent was to try to hammer through all of those, but I think we're gonna adjust our thinking a little bit and start with natural resources. And then maybe hold on housing, because I think that conversation could be a longer one that we might want to spend some time on. So rather than try to rush through, given some time constraints, we'll try to get the natural resources, see what we get into from marine resources and then housing. That work? Great. All right, so approval of minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Does anybody want to take minutes? Volunteers? I think we've already had a couple, 3 people involved. Great.
Thank you.
Did everybody have a chance to look at minutes from last time? I think this is them all kind of big. We could hold them.
Do you want a motion?
Sure.
Move to approve the minutes.
Any,
Second.
any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. I guess we accept the minutes. Awesome. All right, next on the agenda, we have 5 minutes for public comment. Anybody from the public? I don't think anybody's on Zoom like that, no. So Alan, you're still here as a member of the public, but awaiting.
Nothing now.
Great. All right, we'll move on then. The next on the list is committee updates. So the first thing on the list really is, we'll just dive into the additional committee members. So I think we talked about this last time, but I'm not sure. So we've had some people that have had to drop off the committee and had some people like Alan who are wanting to join the committee. I need to follow up with the board to make sure that they're approving new members, but I think we need to have some discussion. We talked about this last time, but just to confirm, we have a few open slots and we can manage that process. But I just want to make sure that's okay.
And
Yeah.
I'm likely to bow out once
Yep.
elections happen next week. So I just have plenty to do.
Yeah.
Just be that.
I think we have Alan who's interested. We had, was it Kate
Yeah. Okay, Chuck.
Chaplin who is interested. I don't know if there's anybody else, but we could probably use like one or two more.
Sarah March had mentioned she was interested to me, but I did ask her, like, should I advocate? And she didn't. I'm not sure how heavily, because I know she has a lot of commitments, but she may be interested.
Cool. One of his call her back and say, hey, we have 20 interested in.
Is that a status? I mean, sure, she would probably.
I think, I don't know.
To the floor.
Yeah, if she's interested.
It's up to the select-
Does she, what would she sort of represent? Yeah,
What was that?
where is she?
Somerville.
Somerville.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I can pass on the form.
yeah,
The
that'd be
application.
great. Yeah, so we have back to two Somerville reps.
How many openings will we have?
I don't know, two or three or four, maybe. Yeah, I don't think we need like, it's a large group right now, but if you want to kind of get back to the size that we had originally started with, I think it would be four.
But we're not trying to have like exclusively one person from a village or anything like that.
That would be ideal, but at this point, I don't think it
Doesn't-
matters all that much. We do need somebody from Otter Creek though. I think that would be great. So if we could put our thinking caps on. For some Creek residents, that would be awesome.
We had a-
Mike had said there was somebody, but I don't know who he didn't want to follow.
I think he was talking about one of the Smith girls.
Yeah.
Do we have a pick from one?
Is Stephanie on this?
Oh, yeah, Stephanie.
Stephanie Reese?
Yep.
Okay.
That's right. I haven't heard from her about this meeting.
And Kate is where?
Murphy Hardin. Yeah. Okay.
Do you feel like for Sarah, has she like asked you specific questions? Do you feel like you can?
Just tell what is still open
Okay.
for new.
Anyone who's interested does have questions, like, we're happy to answer those questions too, if you feel like they're more detailed than you can.
Does it have to be somebody who is a year-round resident? Thinking like the Economic Development Committee has several people who are summer residents. And I'm wondering, since it's such a mix, would it be helpful to have somebody, and since we're getting into the different season, or they could join us online, would that be useful? Well, I don't know.
So I would say from a like technical standpoint, unless there's a policy from the town that says you can't be on a committee if you're not a full-time resident, then there's no reason that you can't be a member from our perspective. I'll leave that discussion up to you folks.
Is there a policy that we should, is anybody who have?
That would be aware of that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that there are like on committees with seasonal residents. Yeah, pretty sure there's no policy. You know?
My guess is it's only elected positions.
Yeah.
Select board.
Yeah.
The committees and boards are appointed, so. Ultimately, it would be up to the select board to appoint.
Yeah.
Can you say again, did you say Otter Creek? Where are the areas that need representation?
Let's see, I think we have all of the villages. With the exception of Otter Creek.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Great. Is there someone in particular you're thinking of, Kathy,
No.
that's interested or?
No, just wondering about opening it up.
It was good.
Yeah.
Perfect. I would be curious.
Subject of a lot of history.
So the process would be, again, we need a couple more people, but we have, say, three, I think there are at least three that are interested, including Sarah. And then if we needed another one, but fill out the application, it goes to the Board of Selectmen. And I think our job is really just to tell the board, yes, you can, if it so pleases the board, you can accept 4 more members, and then we're probably full. So right now, they're just not full because we told them they're full. Cool. All right. Next thing on the list is update on the survey.
Right,
Want to hit it?
sure. Well, we didn't prepare any slides like last time. I think, I'm trying to think, when we met last time, we talked about it, we were in the 120s. And now we're up to 173. We got 2 yesterday and a handful on the 29th. I did some direct outreach to people with kids and that I knew maybe might be interested, and so thank you. Yeah, we're keeping the survey open until through town meeting. So I think at town meeting it's important to draw attention to it and get the word out that way as well. Hopefully we'll I would love to get 200. We were looking at like confidence intervals today. I don't think the idea is to make it like statistically valid per se. It'd be great to have more, but yeah, that's where we're at right now. And
I did ask the school to include it in their newsletter, right? So I gave them
was
the
that
poster with the new date on it.
okay? Great.
So that went out like at the beginning of vacation.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I gave it to the.
Oh, good. Thank you. Great, great, great.
I'll check back in with Susie at the neighborhood watch because she had said she would send it. Unless there's a channel that I am not in the loop on, I don't think it went out. I think that would be a good one.
Okay.
I think, so we're really kind of relying on outreach from everybody here, plus the internet and whatever events that we can get to. But if we could maybe take one more push, sort of leading up to town meeting to blast it out on the whatever the service we have available or email. Whatever, that would be great. And just to try to boost it a little bit more.
And they did have it in the summer residence.
Right, yes,
Association.
I had reached out with them again, but I think maybe they already heard that it was sent through the alerts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
When I was thinking about sending it out, I noticed that which we may have discussed this, but I noticed that all of the questions are required in future surveys. That to me felt like really like a accessibility issue, but also like a truth, like a reliability issue, in terms of people might answer without having actual like actually anything to say or any opinion on the matter. So something to consider for future surveys. I don't think it changes this one.
Great.
Good feedback. So can we rely on you to reach out to Susie again and see if they can get it out? Can you put it out on the MD 365 list one more time?
Yeah, we did include it in our newsletter yesterday.
Yep, oh, great, good. And, yeah, just,
I send it out to my people.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see the ones at the library? I don't know how many there were, but one of the librarians was saying, oh, there's quite a few here.
Good. Yeah, I have it on my list to follow up.
I don't know what that
But-
means. Okay, that's fine.
And I know there's some like in the box over here at the town office too, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we can talk to Claire one more time, Suzanne.
And are we doing something particular at the town meeting?
Well, that's great. Segue into our next agenda item, which is town meeting prep. So I guess I have questions, hopefully everybody's going to the town meeting. But also I can get there a little bit early, but we could bring a poster. But I think that we could use some support that's not either me or me and Suzanne to like really try to get people to take the survey at the beginning of town, before town meeting. So if you're waiting in line to register or get your voting cards or whatever, they're called, that would be great. And I haven't talked to Claire, but it might be nice to have a place where we can put the poster, but we need to do that.
Will there be paper copies of this at town meeting?
We can definitely bring paper copies,
Yeah.
yep.
And then during the, not so exciting articles, maybe people fill it out. You
Yep.
could collect them at the end.
Sure.
The LOIs would be one that's not very exciting.
Oh, that's the lead up, that's what bores people into.
Submission.
Just leading to all the land stuff. Yeah.
Maybe the moderator could. That's an idea. I'll see if you might consider.
Can you put
He'll
that,
soon to be
can you
elected.
put that on the script?
Yeah.
I would love that. It's super logical and pertinent.
So we need some hard copies.
Yep.
Some posters.
How
How about some,
slew of pens for people that we can
Pens?
say, I
how about some,
walk through the benches and say, I've done it, I've done it.
That's totally the energy we are looking
yeah, but we could also,
Yeah, people hate me more.
Yeah.
But
How much more obnoxious can I be?
That'd be awful, unless you calm down.
we could also do some flyers like what we did, actually, what we were gonna do for the lunch, the last neighborhood house lunch, just put them on chairs.
Hmm.
Or just, you know,
With the QR code. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, that's a good idea, because we can go early and just distribute those.
Yeah.
All over the place.
yeah. And so I typically don't stick around till the very end of town meeting because I'm not sure that's super useful for town's resources, but if we do have the hard copies, if somebody could be there, who's planning on being to the end, make sure we get them. That'd be awesome. Happy to stay, if anybody really wants me to. It's usually when the school budgets get voted on, just sitting there. Okay. Anything else we should be doing at town meeting? We could get a little table and just
Yep.
sit behind the table and just talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, if we're there. Yeah.
And if we had dates for things planned, we might want to get that word out in advance, if we, where there's gonna be like village meetings or whatever it is we're gonna be planning on.
I don't think we have that.
Yep, not yet, ready yet.
Good idea.
Right.
It's happening on Tuesday.
Okay. Seems like they're good. All right. So the next thing on the list is the summer public outreach discussion. And what I think the purpose of this item on the agenda really is to make sure that we brainstorm from everybody in the room, like what events do you think there are going to be in the summer? And then let's talk a little bit about how we should participate in some of those events. So I think Suzanne and I are thinking about it a little bit. It really isn't necessarily even asking people for anything. It's basically just making sure that people are aware that we're doing this process and that where they should go to try to get information or participate in the process. So it's not like a big ask. It's just that we're gonna need some participation from people in this room, maybe from us, for some of those meetings at those events where we can just say, this is going on. Some of them maybe we want to have more of a presence. Some of them would maybe want to have a smaller presence. But I thought what we could do today is really kind of make sure we brainstorm that list. I know we've talked about it a little bit in the past. And then talk, to some degree as we're brainstorming about what would make sense to be, present at that meeting, at those meetings.
So wouldn't you go to the Summer Residents Association meetings this summer and be part of the agenda?
Yeah, for that one, yes, that's a good example of one that we said as Summer Residents Association meeting, do we want to try to get to both?
Yes.
And if we do, to me, it would be, here's what, it could be it would be more of a presentation than and a discussion than hey, we're doing this.
But I think you do want to go to both of them.
Yep, so there's one in July and one in August. And we probably should reach out to, what's her name, to see when they are. When are they? You know the
Probably
dates?
would know that date.
Daryl?
That would be, it should be on their, part of their website, which is part of the town website.
Okay.
Not anymore. I think I looked recently, I couldn't find it on there.
Oh, all right.
Does anybody mind if I occasionally like it's helpful for me? But I'm gonna look it up right now. Does it bother anyone?
No,
no, it's fine.
My computer, I'm still present. That was a reason.
I think they moved summer residence meetings to the neighborhood house.
Yeah.
So that would not be on the town's calendar.
No, but they used to have a link on the homepage for like committees, and they used to include the SRA in there. And that link is no longer there. I looked for it recently because we wanted to see about the newsletter,
Right.
and I didn't see it there anymore.
Are those meetings like open to anybody? Are they like an hour long? What's the typical agenda?
It's usually an hour because people want to just get in and get out.
Okay.
Because they have other things to do.
They have
Yeah.
time on call.
And it's really just the summer residents
They go.
association,
But then-
unless you're sort of asked,
I see.
because I kind of went in.
Yeah.
And they didn't know I was coming.
Oh,
I've been to a couple, they're pretty good meetings.
They are.
Yeah.
They get an update from Derlin,
uh-huh.
from the board of the SRA. Often have somebody from the Acadia National Park there talking about what's going on there. They had firemen there one year to talk about the ambulance service going out of business, et cetera. So,
Kyle, you've been when you did a reassessment.
yeah.
Did you have to wear armor that year?
Just the thick skin was good.
So it looks like they have their own, they may have for a while, but it doesn't, I don't see it on the town website. I do see it on their own web page. And they do have a meetings page. But I think it's referencing a 2024 meeting.
Okay.
As opposed to.
Is www.srtmg.org.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they haven't set their dates.
But the other thing is Anne Marie would know because the meetings are at the neighborhood.
Yeah, why don't, I think we can reach out to Darlene or Anne Marie, or we can pencil that in. I think, for tonight, so just to be mindful of time. We're gonna put that on the list. What's other things that we should be making sure that we do? Isn't there I feel like there's a couple of like summer festival type things that always happen over here, like, with some.
Memorial Day,
Yep.
parade and lunch down on Green.
But what would we be doing for that?
So typically, like this kind of outreach would be setting up a small table, maybe having a poster and just answering questions and saying, hey, the town is going through this process. Here's what it involves. Right now, we're in this stage. Maybe there's we can create like a postcard or a flyer that has a QR code for the project website. And like, if you're interested, get in touch if you have questions. It's really just sort of like being present and letting people know that it's happening. And there's no like ask to take a survey, but some people will want to engage and like talk to you about their concerns or the things they love or whatever it is. And some people have no idea like what a comprehensive plan is. So helping them understand that like there will be policies written that sort of have to do with land use and that thing.
The word plan, yes.
Yes, it can be very
If you ever wanted to just set up a card table on my lawn
okay.
any morning during the summer, that's fine.
Okay.
And I would suggest like 9:30 to 11:30 when people are going to the mail and going to get the paper and doing those kind of things.
Is that something that like a committee member could be at, or are you thinking that what if I could be there?
I don't care who's
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
It matters not, but someone that's able to engage with the public and bring people to them more than having, because people just walk right by my office all the time.
Yeah,
What about the Chamber of Commerce?
at their
They have,
events
yeah,
there.
they do have events.
On Thursday nights.
Okay.
There are some Thursday nights.
They have a website and,
Are the movies?
No, they do dating yourself. Oh, the movie's down here.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if they're doing movies this year. And then there's also the farmer's market, but I don't know. That's a whole
that'd be a
different,
tough, that's,
Yeah.
people go in with a mission.
right.
Are all of these things in North
To get to the
Harbor?
tomatoes
Yes.
first. Huh?
Okay,
Um,
what about in other villages?
So Seal Harbor will have a library sale on the green.
Okay,
And
There's a library, like a library sale in Somersville, but it's hard for me to quite imagine. They don't have like other information tables or
Right.
anything. It's really a library event.
We have Strawberry Festival.
Highly touristed.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds.
Which one? The Seal Harbor one?
Somerville.
Something else, yeah, that's a. Yeah,
What about at Beach Hill Farm? Are there any events that take place there?
Sure.
Well, definitely.
Yeah, I know they are.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to.
Look into that.
Their store might have some compatibility.
What?
The COA store, little store, there is all fresh produce.
sorry, about Beach Hill.
Beach Hill
I
Farm.
wonder if they could just have like information, little like nook. Is that what you're thinking of at the store?
And that'd be, I think general store would be another good location for that too.
No, that too many of these suggestions are really hitting year-round residents very heavily.
Or
I mean, how many
visiting.
opinions do we need from tourists? To be a quick one.
But how many tourists?
Most of this is not, I think we're not really asking. So I would classify a lot of these things as like, these are informational opportunities, like we're gonna make a postcard or a little poster, some of which we can leave there, with some of which we can hand out before present, like at Katrina's lawn party.
Yeah.
But I would say, and then this is like opportunities for, you know, where's that informal interaction and those conversations that we can have with people, you know, to just let them know, hey, this is happening, something you should pay attention to. More than just like this traditional, let's have a public meeting, which we are going to do. But we still need to like make an effort to find those little opportunities, you know, if something at the Memorial Day lunch, just to sit, just to be there and say, hey, we're updating our comp plan, you really should pay attention to this website, or be involved, or at least know that it's going on and why it's important. So it's an effort to, it's sort of like doing the survey, you know, if you get a, you know, 20% return rate on some of those engagements, like that's a win.
I wonder when in elementary school spring concert.
I was wondering about that. I can look at it. I can find it. I'm sure that there are any about there, but that's a good idea.
I know my kids go to Center Jamestown, but like when they were going through the design phase of their new school, they frequently had like materials set up and they even had the architect or somebody there, team to answer questions at one of like the spring concert.
And they'll, further on, there'll be probably a Halloween parade through town.
Right.
People, that's October.
The Seal Harbor Village Improvement Society must have a meeting during the summer. So I would think if you could get on their agenda.
What was that?
Seal Harbor Village Improvement,
Is there, I guess,
Is it the one for Northeast Harbor?
there is, but the Northeast Harbor one is more of a year-round. You know, it's Rick Savage and Jerry Summonsby, and I think it's Bob Fault and it might be Christopher, but I'm not sure. But I think Seal Harbor is more of a meeting, and remember the Seal Harbor Village Improvement Society are the people that take care of the Seal Harbor Village Green and the Seal Harbor Beach. So they really are doing things that are very visible.
Debbie DeJulio, is that still a person that is involved there?
She's the bookkeeper, secretary person,
That's the contact name.
Yes.
Their website, okay.
and she grew up in Northeast Harbor. So she would understand wanting to be a part of that.
is there something that makes us like, I think it's valuable to be a presence and to make sure people are aware and that they can ask questions and learn more. Is there something that we are going to be asking of the public besides the survey down the road that would be
Later on, you mean?
Meetings.
Yeah.
Community meetings.
community meetings?
Yeah, and I think once we have like our, when we're done reviewing all the inventories, we'll have a public meeting that says, here's the result of the survey. Here's the key findings kind of summarized. And then, you know, asking for feedback. What are your thoughts on that? Does that ring true? What do you think is missing? Those kind of common questions, and then we'll do couple exercises to look more specifically at vision, values, and some initial sort of future land use questioning, but that will be more like a one standalone larger public meeting event.
No, like different villages.
Not in that case, but, yeah, I think that the later on engagement is sort of like, here's where we are in the process, you know, do you have any reaction to this so far? Like, what's missing, you know, what are your thoughts, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Will there be like a rat card that can be passed out? That's what you're hoping to do, right?
Mhm.
So would you be able to have that be distributed from the Historical Society and some sound from the Great Harbor Maritime Museum in Northeast, from the Chamber building down here?
We could, yes,
Saying
you guys think that's,
That we're doing comprehensive plan.
those kinds of things are really helpful.
Well, I guess that's what I'm trying to understand is like how much to put into the, like, what is the
Well,
volume?
We could also do like a, sort of like a trifold, you know, 8.5 by 11 that says like, here's a comp plan, these are the things that are actually important. And if you could-
And these are your opportunities to be a part. Like, I think that asks for that.
Yep.
That's makes
And
it
the
really
relevance.
relevant to them
Yeah.
in a more personal, more
Yeah.
immediate way.
Yeah, but I think the bullet points really are, you know,
Mhm.
yeah, we're gonna be talking about vision and values and all that stuff, but I mean, you're gonna have to like keyed into what that to really, for that to really click, but it's, you know, things like are we gonna be able to have a urban community anymore? Are we, you know, one of the big, there's like a bunch of topics that'll get people, I think, kind of fired up. Or not, it will spark some.
Yeah.
Conversation.
Yeah, at least,
Remind people that this is voted on at the town meeting.
Yeah.
So what's in it should be something.
yeah,
You don't want people to get to town meeting when it does get to town meeting and be like, I have never heard about this. You want them to be like, yes, we know.
So just-
That's helpful. No, that is
It's like, that's what. we
That is
do.
helpful, I
It's like,
think.
We're gonna be voting on this, assuming you're civically
Yeah.
active. And you need to be engaged.
Right.
Or where.
I'm just thinking like, were I to go to a group and say, could we have an info table? Like, what is it that's gonna be like the real reasoning for them to feel it's valuable? And I think that is it.
Yeah, we'll be writing policies that affect sort of municipal decision making in the future.
Setting goals for the town.
Yeah. With regard to this discussion, we won't be mindful of time given us the agenda again and consider whether we want to do.
And can I just wrote one for you is that since we're gonna be passing out information and we want people to come to any public meeting or however many, maybe we should set those dates sooner rather than later.
that's the reason why we're having this discussion right now, so we can set those dates.
All right, good.
Yep,
Do you add the library to your, places to have information?
library,
Libraries. So we've got the Seal Harbor Library, the Stonesville
Yeah.
Library.
I've already talked to Amy here about doing sort of just a general, and have a discussion about the content process.
all right. I think that's good. Suzanne, maybe you and I can engage with Kelly to come up with some good.
Yeah.
Just gonna see if I can switch. Okay, so I'm gonna skip over the housing, so let's move into the next topic, and I'm just gonna skip over these slides.
Right?
No, it's because my kid are.
You're not the only one that.
All right, so this is a similar kind of discussion that we had from our last meeting, but again, what we've done is gone through the old comprehensive plan. And really tried to update the data and come up with a set of key findings. So the version that you have in front of you is the draft. Well, so, and then we've prepared sort of these summary slides that we're talking about, which is hopefully gonna be a good tool for everybody to not have to, for others to not have to like slog through the whole document if you're not interested, but like really get to the meat of the matter. So we decided to start with natural resources because we have a few things we'd like to go over with that, but we have the same thing that we did last time, which is coming up with some key findings about natural resources, including town is enhanced by its accessible scenic and natural resources. So what we found was a lot of probably obvious stuff, but the town has a lot of natural resources. A bunch of it's in the park, but also a bunch of it's very accessible, either walking or driving through the park. So that's one key resource, but it's also that enhances the community. I mean, just keep reading through them and then you guys can have at it. Yeah.
That map is different than the one that got mailed to us, I think, isn't it?
2 pages, so maybe.
Maybe the first page.
Maybe, okay. Sorry.
The next one we had was much of the land in the town is protected from development, which does enhance habitat connectivity and biodiversity. So Acadia National Park is like 40% of the town. Drinking water supply comes from both groundwater and surface water. So there are 3, I think, public water sources. Town also has the water protection, the ordinances that protect the drinking water supply. And there are I think there are only 2 aquifers, sand and gravel aquifers in town. One's over by the golf course, which is interesting.
Is this text taken from the previous?
Nope, some of it we just redid. Yeah, I would say what, for the future, we have taken anything that you see is like our current draft. And we have maybe taken some language from that plan, but if we had to massage it a little bit. So the old plan, where we're really gonna be getting into it is in the future. We're gonna be taking like the goals and strategies from the old plan and just some of them have already been done, so we can delete those. And then others, we're just gonna take word for word. Here's what you said you wanted to do in 2009. Here's what it's still there. Is it still valid based on what we learned from the last discussions that we've had?
But I mean, I think this also answers your question, especially for this topic, like there's a program at the State Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Health, beginning with habitat. They do tremendous data collection and identification of a lot of this information. And that didn't exist to the same degree, like when the current plan was done. So these key findings come from that inventory chapter, which is just sort of a data gathering exercise from that source in particular.
Some of the wording might be similar to the old plan, because we're trying not to like.
Yeah, any place where something like didn't change and still makes sense, the way it's written is still in there.
All right. So we also just pointed out that the streams have a really high environmental quality rating, the highest rating for the most part, except for a few that are in the B tier. One question I would have around that is like, where are the areas of stream infiltration that we want to be concerned with, or sometimes there's like culverts and road crossings that we need to be thinking about for stream water quality protection. Over only 6% of the soils, if you look at the soils map, are classified as prime farmland. So there's not a huge amount of the soils in the town that is great for farming. And most of the shoreline of the water bodies outside of the park are developed. So I think there are 11 lakes and ponds in Mount Desert, and most of the shoreline is developed in those areas that aren't in the park. I don't know if anybody had a chance to really look through the deep dive on the other stuff, but is there anything that was sort of jumping out at you, or at least in your experience, like, boy, this is what I thought was going to be in there? All good stuff. We have a lot of protected land, a lot of biodiversity and different habitat opportunities. I think when we get into some discussions, it would be interesting to think about threats to water quality, those kinds of things. Yes.
Speaking of that, groundwater concerns. As a person on a well and fractured environment, and I think that it's gonna be very important for the town. You're talking about density and increasing density to burrow to our actual capacity to make properties, become more dense, given the nature of the water supply. Are we sure that we can do this thing?
I don't think it's just the water supply in, I think it's the water supply out too, because we are so ledgy. Getting in the septic systems or the sewer.
Sure, yep. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Although presumably you could deal with that more easily by, in the areas that already have septic. You know, already have sewer.
Right, but those sewer plants can only accommodate
Yes.
so
yes,
much.
Yes, you're right, for sure.
So I just wrote down groundwater dominance, groundwater will make understanding quality / quantity important in planning for future growth.
And I think she's right to say also sewage. Sewage, septic systems and sewage capacity. And you don't want that infrastructure to lag.
Yeah, so maybe one, we can add to that, keep finding a little bit. So maybe separate out the groundwater, water. We could do a key finding that just deals with drinking water. So there's, there are 4 or 3 water bodies that provide public drinking water sources. They're protected by ordinances and surrounded by conservation land. And then another bullet that just deals with like, there's a dominance on, groundwater wells, which, pick up some of that, and then also because of that, septic systems will also.
Well, it might be worth having some maps or some information that shows where the town is served by
Public water.
public water versus.
That is in the public facilities chapter.
On the maps that are here, would it be possible to put a legend to say what you're indicating on here?
For sure.
Yep.
Yeah, they're in the inventory chapter. I don't know why they didn't copy over, but definitely.
All right, so the other thing, for this chapter that we wanted to point out is if you looked at the larger chapter at the end of this one, we have a section called, I think it's, so it's basically, sustainability and environmental considerations. There, the thought process is, not necessarily
Sustainability.
sustainability, implications. Yeah. And so that I think is an attempt to sort of address like areas that we may, that these are things that, these are implications from kind of the sustainability questions that we may want to consider as we're going through. We did think the conversation really is when we talking about this issue at the beginning, people thought it was important that we want to address it rather than having a separate chapter dedicated to this. We're going to try to integrate it in different ways in these chapters. This is, I think, one of the ways that we think might be a good way to do it. Does it make sense to me? Without having to read through it, but at least that approach. Hello.
Hi.
You guys here for the select board meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you guys, I think there's reading in this.
Okay.
You just said like every section, having 8 concerns.
Yes, yep.
But it's in regards to finance and sustainability that we are saying.
Or just, like whether it seems like we have a bunch of key findings and then is there any concerns?
No, we haven't gone to that level yet, but we could do that. Sort of, I think sometimes the key findings could build into that.
Sometimes too, depending on the topic, if there's like a really prominent emerging trend or something that is worth mentioning that maybe isn't being like inventoried specifically for the community, you can put that at the end. But I think we wrestled with like, how do you address the climate and sustainability aspect sort of throughout the plan, and then calling it out in particular where it makes the most sense.
Right, I was just
Yeah.
wondering, I think, would it be that granular, it should only be climate, because it's like housing is a concern, but the climate, you know, it's like, we should have concerns that are outside. And I just think like it limited it to,
In the natural resources section.
but just in general. I was assuming that we're doing that in every section that it's.
Yeah.
To.
I think what Noel's trying to say is like in the natural resources section, we had included this part about sort of climate and sustainability implications for the natural resources. And so, yeah, at the end of that, that inventory chapter, you know, these are very kind of general discussions of things that could occur. But it's not like data that says like, we have collected this data and show that like over the last 20 years that a certain type of plant species or insect or something has changed. So it's kind of like a general reference to it. And I
Yeah.
think we're just trying to get a sense of like, is that a good way to approach it?
Well, if you wanted
Having a whole entire separate,
possibly, if you
Deep
want
dive.
information about changes in the environment, the park may be a resource to provide. You know, there's certainly, anybody who lives around here knows that there are pests that come and go now, didn't used to be here. To moth, the fire ants, I don't know, the woolly diligence,
Yeah.
all those sorts of things that
We're
they
definitely
may
gonna-
have. And invasive species and plant species. And then I guess that all ties in ultimately to, is there anything that should be come out of this with regard to changes in policy, changes in our land use ordinances to better respond to what we can reasonably anticipate?
Yeah, so I think also I would add to your question, which is how do we summarize? I didn't know exactly what you meant, but you know, there's things that are gonna pop up, and even in this discussion, like I would classify Gail's comment as a key finding, but also a concern.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure that we don't lose those concerns as we're going through this discussion?
You know, I would say that from a planning board perspective, a lot of what we've been doing in the past year is responding to things that have been wiped out by major storms. And allowing people to rebuild in the same spots. Maybe a little bit higher. And I guess you know, financially, that's on them if it gets wiped out again, but to what extent should the, and we can't do anything about that. We can't, and we're not, because we just enforce the ordinance. We're not in a position to say to the Northeast Harbor Fleet, are you sure that that building is gonna be washed okay again? I mean, then following FEMA guidelines, and maybe that's all we can do, if we still have FEMA guidelines. Following FEMA guidelines and because that's another issue. I mean, the guidelines, the federal guidelines, that sort of thing, I might predict are gonna be for a period of time lacking. And so is the town the decision, or should they be considering what's reasonable for us to do about some of these things? And what latitude?
right, those are really good questions. There is a lot of data readily available about, like projected sea level rise, like highest fast boundable tide plus in these different scenarios.
Yep.
You know, I mean, that will be part of what we've done. I don't know if we've gotten into the deep dive on that in the marine resources section, but those maps are things that we can bring to the table.
Right.
And typically, not to go like too into the rabbit hole here, but like, you know, if you did have a climate change implications section of this chapter, for example, where it seems most pertinent, like
that could be a place where you would put those maps. And then ask those questions perhaps.
Because I think part of this conversation is gonna be about getting people to begin to think differently about how we use the edges. Or how we can't use the edges, or what the edges are.
Or will be.
Or will be, yeah. But that's gonna take a shift in attitude. And how do we have that conversation that? We've all seen hurricanes wipe out communities on barrier reefs and the houses, they're just a little higher. That's like, out of the insurance base.
Part of the future land use discussion, like, revolve around some of that.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, we're so far up here, comp plan is up here, so it's sort of like directing this is the path that you need to take to have that conversation. And what's at the end of that road is,
Sure.
not, is yet to be determined. That's where like our next step might be, and I think, Doug's probably already working on this, but you actually need to do a more comprehensive vulnerability assessment of your community in order to make smart choices about how you make investments in those areas.
Well, roads are another big one.
Roads or culverts or
Yeah.
docks, like what do you have?
Yeah.
You have a huge, very important waterfront, infrastructure in town, and there's public money that gets invested in that, and so what's your investment strategy, or how do you think about those things in the future?
Yeah, it seems like for our policy, like our guiding things for policy, I'm happy to let people make their own mistakes and pay for them.
Uh-huh.
Right, like, but if it then, just like having a float in the harbor, if that breaks loose and hits somebody else's boat, you're responsible for it. So the only policy I could see was that we should be thinking about is, do your poor choices other people's?
Well, when a house washes into the ocean, there's some implication for the ocean. and-
Right.
And that's,
So that's getting back to the public part of it, you're right, there's the natural resources part, what are the natural resource implications of climate change too, and then how do you wanna start, what role does the town play in that larger discussion? Yeah.
Sorry.
All right, so we're jumping off the Zoom.
Yeah.
Clean living.